Well, the 2024 Minnesota Vikings schedule has officially released, and to help us break down the London game is our guy, George from George on Sports. He is a regular contributor to the NFL on DAZN, but he also is more importantly a contributor here to the Minnesota Vikings podcast today. George, thank you for joining us. First and foremost, we were talking before, and you were, conveying to me via Instagram that you have been to the Vikings London games the past 3 years. Like, your first comment was you remember Adrian Peterson's long run a few years ago when I believe we played the Pittsburgh Steelers that year in London. Just walk us through your familiarity with the Vikings, one, and then just us making the trip back over to the UK this year.
Yeah, I mean, when I've been a fan of the sport for God knows how many years now. I also played the sport for 11 years as a running back. So when I say the sport is in my blood, the sport really is in my blood. I've got family members who managed to play some stints in the NFL, but I've always been a fan of the sport. I've watched pretty much all the games that have happened here in London, some of them at Tottenham, some of them at Wembley Stadium. The one you speak about in particular with the Vikings, I mean, the Vikings as a team and a brand, I think I kind of came across them back when I first got into the sport because I don't see many purple and yellow logo team colors for starters. So that really got my attention. And then I don't know if you know, but the UK has a history with Vikings itself, actual Vikings who, back in the day. So they're a strong link between the UK and that in the sense that you guys are the Vikings. So my ears kind of pricked up. And as a running back, you guys had the main man, Adrian Peterson, all day, as they like to call him. And for me, he was like him and Marshall Lynch, guys that I really looked up to. And that game we speak about in London in 2013, and you're right, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, a big win, 34-27. I was watching that game as a fan, and I honestly, I have it on a video somewhere. I will never forget seeing Adrian Peterson run out of a tunnel. The flames were going, the lights were low. My heart was pumping out of my chest. It was unreal. And then I was with my wife at the time, girlfriend at the time, now wife, and I was telling her, look, you need to, this guy here, Adrian Peterson, he's going to make a big play. And lo and behold, he made a play for the ages. I think he broke a tackle, stiff-armed the guy into the ground, and outrun a couple guys to score to the right-hand side of the end zone. And I absolutely lost my mind. So I will never, ever, ever forget that play. But you mentioned again, there's a couple more games that obviously the Vikings have played in London. Yeah. 2017, the Cleveland Browns. I believe Case Keenum might have been the quarterback at that point in time.
Yep.
Another big win there, over 30 points. But the game for me that sticks out most, aside from the AP game, is the 2022 game. And that's one of the games I attended as NFL UK media, and I have done for the last 3 years now. And that's the game that I coined the double doink game.
Yeah, we've heard that a time or two.
I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And yeah, that game was electric for many different reasons. Not alone the ending, but, Justin Jefferson. I was able to interview him, connect with him, create some content with him. At that point in time, I think he had become the first athlete in a video game series in Fortnite in ever, with the gritty.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Vikings, they do a lot, and they got a good relationship here with the UK.
Yeah, you mentioned going to many of the games already. How would you characterize Vikings fans compared to the rest of the NFL fans that you've encountered?
That's a great question. Passionate. Very friendly, always welcoming. I think one of the things that's good about the Vikings is, you've obviously got the whole skull chant, right? Which is quite easy to get behind. It's really easy to get behind. And once people see that going, be it mom, dad, kids as well, it's very infectious, and it carries really, really easily. So, I mean, I was able to host one of the Vikings watch parties here in London.
Nice.
And they had the drum, they had the skull chant, they had everything going. I believe it was a playoff game. Don't think it ended the way.
That's the one we're thinking.
Don't think
about.
I think that game.
Yeah, well, yeah, but the fans were pumped.
Yeah, we'll move on to that one. The fans were great.
They'll
honestly.
bring the energy.
They always bring the energy, and I think again, it's that relationship between, and it even goes into everything like the color scheme, the people in the building, the people at the top of the building, all the way down to the players. You can see that what the Vikings stand for carries through the people that you have in the squad, and it goes a long way.
George, you sound like you're about to be a converted Vikings fan here, man. Like I'm enjoying the analogies and the description behind this.
You know what it is? I mean, like I said, for people who don't know, they're probably thinking, is he a Vikings fan or not? That's a different story, obviously. Yeah. But as someone who's in the UK, and sometimes people support different teams, and obviously I support the Colts, but the Vikings, I can appreciate good teams. Yeah, I can appreciate good teams, good management, the way organizations are run, because it has a knock-on effect. And if it doesn't go right, then the team isn't And if it does go right, then the team is right.
Yeah.
And I will say they've got great people. I mean, again, I've got a good relationship with the Vikings over here and some great people who do great things in the UK, in particular, the fact that you guys are one of the home market teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we are the home market team, but we're in your home country. And when you think about how the NFL has grown to host some of these international games, what has that meant for your home country?
Oh man, everything. I mean, even if you remove the fact that I played and my head is in the game 24/7, as regular fans in this country who, and I'll take it all the way back to the days that like I touched on before we started. The UK has a rich heritage and a rich history of American football, all the way back to the days of the London Monarchs, where we used to sell out Wembley Stadium, and we still do now, but we were sponsored by the likes of Coca-Cola, Budweiser. It was a serious thing. The London Ravens, the London Olympians, more recently now, London Warriors and London Blitz, one of the teams that I played for, who carried that crown. So if you look at every game that we have here, dating back to God knows how many years, every game is a sellout. Every game is a sellout because I don't think people understand the passion and the want that we have for the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's announced that, this is the next few games that are happening here in the UK, not one, not two, but 3 games. I think we might have had 4 at one point. But for the fans, both the hardcore fans, the casual fans, the fans who are looking to pick a new team, the fans who just want to get involved, the potential fans who just want to get involved in the sport and maybe don't know too much about it, for them to hear that a sport that they associate with the States operates here in the UK and hosts a number of games is unbelievable, and it just continues to grow.
George, why do you think that is? You guys have the Premier League, you have all of your hometown football teams. Why do you think American football is something that the UK is getting more and more into?
I think there's a number of things. One of the things I think is it gets passed down traditionally from family. So if you look at generationally, there used to be people who like my father-in-law actually, who played this sport many years ago, right? And naturally they have kids and they pass it down to their kids, and their kids one day want to ask questions. Like my kids now ask questions about what I do, and they actually, what's that? I've not seen that sport before. But the other side to that is I think there's a culture and an atmosphere element to it. The atmosphere, the vibe, the aura, the culture I mentioned of this sport is so infectious, right? Some people, I mean, football is a big sport over here. Soccer to you guys is obviously a big sport. Like you mentioned, the Premier League, which is about to come to an end. And it has its ways and it has its traditions, let's say, right? Now, if I wanted to take my kids to one of them games, I might think twice. But bringing
That's
them
fair.
to an, yeah, do you
Depending
know what I mean?
on which stadium.
That's correct. That's correct. But bringing them to an NFL game, the whole culture, the vibe, the atmosphere, it's something different too. Like people are, sometimes it's hard to put into words. You have to feel it. You walk into a stadium, you walk into a game, you see the guys with their helmets on, you see the amazing entrances with the music, the flames, the smoke. You hear the guy on the tannoy in the booth commentating on the game. It makes you feel like something you want to be a part of. And one of the ways you can get involved is to obviously pick a team and you go from there. But honestly, I can't say enough about the sport. I honestly, I wish I knew about the sport from a younger age. I really do.
I love that, man. I mean, I'm just thinking about. I mean, I think that was a great question that Tatum asked. Speaking of, how does football and soccer compare? But now talking about the affiliates and some of the, I guess, hometown cooking that the UK has when it comes to soccer. Do you expect that to happen with the NFL starting to host more games in the UK? Do you expect there to be more of an allegiance towards a certain team versus players like there are in soccer?
That's a great question because, yeah, in soccer, obviously, you do have the team alliance, but you also have the player alliance. And a lot of people do that for basketball over here. They like to pick teams, but players. I think without a doubt, I mean, I can already say I know tons and tons of people who they have their team and that's the team only. And to be fair, that's how it should be. You have your team. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy other teams and watch what they do and enjoy when they win games or when they lose games, depending on who you support. But I think the more that this goes on, the more that we have games here, the more that we continue to sell out, the more that we have different pathways. By the way, we have the NFL Academy, we have the International Player Pathway Program. The more that we have these opportunities, people are going to find their way to picking a team. And when you do pick that team, it's like a brotherhood, a sisterhood, a togetherness. You root for that team. You do everything you can. You travel with the team if you can. I mean, for you guys in the States, obviously the States is a lot bigger. So, for some people, it might be a bit harder to get to certain games. But where we only get 3 or 4 a year, we're going to go to every single one of them games because we never want to miss an opportunity.
Yeah, no. I was just thinking about how the UK Vikings fan club, and that club is so intense. I've met a lot of the guys there. They came out to a game recently, and it may have been the Jets game. I can't remember, but it may be. So, ironically enough, maybe they will see 2 Vikings Jets games in the last 2 years. I want to talk about that. The Jets are coming in town, another franchise who has a long history with a very strong and passionate fan base. What are your expectations, or what are you hoping to see from that Vikings-Jets matchup? And were you excited when that was the team that we knew the Vikings were going to play?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, I've spoken so highly of the Vikings, so anything to do with the Vikings is always a good thing, number one. Number two, you only have to look at the guy on the other side of the field who is going to be the main man in that building. And unfortunately for him, he took about 4 snaps and was done. So this time around, we're going to actually see what he can bring to the table, some of the weapons that they've got, and it's going to make for an exciting game. I think games in London are always exciting purely because they just don't happen as often as you guys get games. So I know we got 2 at Tottenham and 1 at Wembley. They've got the Germany game, and then obviously we've got Brazil and Spain next year. But anytime we get a game, it's exciting. So now that you look at the Vikings, a team that has that natural connection to the UK anyway, and then you've got the Jets. Aaron Rodgers is the name that everyone knows, right? Everyone knows his name and everyone talks about him. And now you have to look at what comes with the Jets, right? You mentioned about some of the UK fans going to the Jets game. Well, for those guys in particular, this is going to be even better because it's like a running it back, a Jets and then the Vikings. But the atmosphere is always great. It's going to be even better. I mean, obviously, the Packers came here with Rodgers last year or year before and didn't win that game. But anytime you have a game that includes Justin Jefferson, one of the best to ever do it in the league, and I will say I had him on my fantasy team last year, didn't make it all the way, but he was great.
That's surprising. Well, injuries, right? Injuries.
7 games.
Yeah, injuries. Yeah, it's going to be great, man. Honestly, I can't wait. Obviously, knew the Vikings were one of the teams, and now to hear that the Jets is the other team.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting.
It's going to be fireworks for sure.
Now, I just remember the 2022 game, right, when we played at Tottenham Hotspur, and just the energy was so unique for me. And you've alluded to that a lot of, how everyone comes to that game, no matter what your affiliate says. But I think that was the first game because, for us Vikings fans, when you go to a Vikings home game or a Vikings road game, there's either Vikings purple or the other team. There were so many different jerseys at Tottenham Hotspur in 2022. When you look at just the firepower that the Jets and the Vikings have, do you expect there to be more, maybe green Packer 12s or New York Jets 8s?
Do you know what? I think there'll be a very, very strong purple outing. Honestly, I really do. And I just have to look at the games prior, in particular the Vikings game. Yes, I mentioned I know Aaron Rodgers is a big name, but the Vikings have such a strong relationship here. They got such a strong fan base here. And it's a good point you mentioned, and a lot of people say this in particular if they've come from the States. And when I've been to a lot of the media days and the training days leading up to the game, a lot of the players talk about, I've been told, there's a lot of different jerseys in the stadium, and it's not like your regular home game. Although technically, like you say, if you were back home in Minnesota, it's a sea of purple, right?
Yeah. It's quiet on offense. When we're on offense, it's quiet.
It is. See, here's the thing, right? And this is the other thing that players talk about is when they describe the UK fans, is the UK fans they cheer for anything. A pass, a run, a stiff arm, a flag. But I think that combined with the whole different element of different jerseys, it goes to show how strong the want is. And it's not to say there isn't a Vikings fan base, because and I know there definitely is. But it just goes to show those who are lucky enough to get tickets will represent their team. And we spoke about finding teams. They will have their teams, but the opportunity to watch an NFL game, let alone the Jets and the Vikings, or pretty much any team that comes here, is never going to be passed up.
Yeah, I think I saw all 32 jerseys when I was there last year, which is
Including
fair.
throwbacks.
But I will say the Vikings were the away team last year,
Correct.
and they think they had more fans than the Saints fans did. So that's always a really exciting thing, being the home game now. I can attest, just being out and about in the last few months, that there are several Vikings fans who've been waiting for this day to buy their tickets. They've been waiting to know when the flights are. It's going to be painting the town purple, which I'm very excited about. However, I wanted to put have you put your analysis hat on, George, and kind of is there an offseason move or a draftee or anything like that that really excites you about this particular Vikings roster this year?
I think for me, I like Dallas Turner, right?
Nice.
And obviously, you guys, Daniel Hunter have moved on, and you've got some other guys and other moving pieces. KJ Osborne, someone I was lucky to interview, and Daniel too. Alexander Mattison, the guy that I love personally, gave me a lot of his time, which is great. Obviously, have moved on. But Dallas Turner, when you look at what that defense did last season, I don't think a lot of people were expecting it, right? That defense had turned around, completely turned around. And now you add a guy like that in, Dallas Turner, who can really cause damage on that edge. That's going to be a big problem for teams, a huge problem. Obviously, you look at the quarterback room, the NFL people talk about, the first thing that people talk about is their quarterback. Netflix released a whole show about their quarterback. And Kirk has obviously moved on. And you guys have drafted JJ McCarthy from Michigan. He's a winner. He is a winner. I don't know, you guys have probably seen there are certain players that have been drafted to other teams, and now it's about the time where you start to see highlights on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, and then you get the coaches saying certain things. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but
everyone looks good in the preseason or the offseason.
Exactly, right.
You're still undefeated.
But when you guys can bring it to the building a winner who's been in high pressure moments, I mean, don't get me wrong, all of these guys who've played in college have been through things and they've had to overcome obstacles, but bringing a guy like JJ in who is a winner, who has been in those high pressure scenarios, is coming into a building where expectations are high. You've got a guy like Justin Jefferson who can do it all and has done it all for the time that he's been there. You now have a guy who I think people keep sleeping on, in Aaron Jones, who's made an interdivision switch, which is going to be absolutely huge. That's a great point. I can't wait. I mean, I've seen Aaron Jones play in London before, and seeing him in that purple and seeing him on the field, you now think about pick your poison scenario. You either double JJ or you put 8 man in the box for Aaron Jones, because otherwise you're in trouble. So no, I'm excited for exactly Hawk on the side. You've got Addison as well. So I feel like in terms of, I think for me it's the draftees. I like the JJ pick. You get the quarterback in the room, get him that time with the guys, but also Dallas Turner, and then obviously Aaron Jones in the backfield. So I feel like you guys heading the right way for sure.
Love that.
My final question for you, because you just said heading the right way. Where do you want to see the NFL London games continue to head, being that we're playing in your home country again?
That's a great question. I think you probably get the same answer from many people. I want more games.
Okay.
I want more games.
Okay.
A slight hot take. I don't know if an NFL team based in London is the right thing. As it stands, that's not necessarily happening. You always get the same question every year, the draft, every time Roger Goodell comes over, when are we getting the team? At one point, it was supposedly the Jags, because as you may or may not know, the Jags owner, Khan, also owns Fulham FC, which is a football team, a Premier League team over here.
Fulham
He owns both Fulham Faithful, Fulham FC, both them and the Jags. And at one point, it seems as if Wembley would become the home of the Jags. Operationally, I just don't think it works. There's too much red tape. There's too much travel involved. I don't think it would be fair. So it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but more games, honestly. And there is no doubt in my mind that if we were to extend to 4 or 5 games, let's not forget, I believe there's a new agreement that from next year can push games up to 8 games, international games a year. So there's no reason why we can't give the UK 4, maybe even 5. Hey, who knows? Because I guarantee
I know they keep going elsewhere, and then they take games away from you guys.
Right, Brazil,
they do.
Mexico.
I mean,
Germany.
Mexico, but we've still got the 3, which is great.
Yes.
Germany's good. It's great fun. But here in the UK, I want more games, right? Give us 4 games. And let's see. I mean, the other side to that is the opportunities that UK guys are getting. Like you saw, there was a guy in the 7th round, Travis Clayton, who was drafted, one of my guys. So happy for the guy. F.A. Abada, who'd been through the Falcons, the Panthers, and now with the Washington Commanders, went through the same program, and he's flourishing. So it's amazing to see these stories and then return back to the UK and play on their own home soil. So, let's get more of that going. Let's get more games, more fans. It's going to be a sellout regardless every single year. So my answer to that question would be, again, a bit of a cop-out, but give us more games.
The demand's there.
Yeah, and especially, if we're selling tickets, that's all that matters, right?
Exactly. Money talks, right?
Money talks, and you've been great. You've given us more than what we've asked for. George, thank you so much for joining us. Vikings Jets in London this year. Looking forward to seeing you out there at Tottenham Hotspur.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.